You're very welcome to another episode of the Scaling Your Business podcast. For this episode, we're joined by Patrick McCarthy, the founder and CEO of Digifly. Patrick, you're very welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me, Rian. Pleasure to be here.
Chuffed to have you. We were talking before on Stillorgan is where you're based at the moment. For
That's
an international
correct,
audience, that's Dublin and Ireland. Did you grow up there?
No, I didn't. I was born in Cork,
Okay.
but my parents actually moved up to Dublin when I was 1. So I learned to crawl and drill in Cork, and then the rest was in Dublin. We moved up to Dublin when I was just between 1 and 2, I think. And I was in Dublin until till I left school. Ended up going down to Limerick then into UL to study there, and then moved around a bit. I was in the UK for a while and up in Belfast, and then came back to Dublin to finally properly settle in Dublin probably about 6 years ago.
Nice. So when you go to Croke Park, if you're into hurling or football, do you wear a blue jersey or a red jersey?
It'll be a blue jersey. Yeah. I would, even though I was born in Cork, and sorry everybody from Cork, I would consider myself a Dublin man. Yeah.
You spent most of your formative years in Dublin, so understandable. So talk to me. Before you moved to UL, you spent more than a decade in Dublin growing up. What was that like? Have you got any standout memories? Because that's leading to a second question I have. Is the reason I'm asking that.
Yeah, no, it was kind of a standard upbringing, if there's such a thing. But love my years in Dublin. We used to go down to Cork for summer holidays, actually, but so I used to love my time down there as well. But yeah, just usual upbringing and going into primary school, secondary school, and then as I said, it moved down to Limerick. But no real standout times. I did love the summers that we spent down in Cork, as a bit of a change. But yeah, that was good fun. Enjoyed growing up in Dublin.
Nice. I'm on the border myself. We were speaking before we hit record. I'm in Ratoath, but my girlfriend's from the Dublin Mountains, so I spend a fair bit of time. I'm over there this evening. The reason I asked where you grew up and what your life was like growing up was because usually someone can pinpoint 1, maybe 2, 3 people, a teacher, a friend, an acquaintance, a relative who had an impact or influence on who they've become today. Does anyone's name spring to mind when I ask you if you can think of anyone who had an influence on who you've turned out to be?
Well, I think, first and foremost, it would very much be my parents. My dad was a hard worker. He was very into sports as well. He's not so much these days. He's in his late 80s, but doesn't play them as much, but certainly does watch them. And he would have been a big influence on me in growing up, and my mum as well. She's a very caring individual and very intuitive. She always knew what I was, and still does to this day. Knows what I'm thinking about before I'm thinking about it. And they were hugely supportive when I was growing up, and gave me a great life and growing up and a great foundation to continue into adulthood. Yeah. So, in terms of, I know that's probably a stereotypical answer, the parents are the influencers, but it would be very much the case for me. Yeah.
What are your parents' names?
Paddy and Mary. So yeah,
2 typical Irish names. I like it.
You wouldn't need to guess what country they're from. Paddy and Mary McCarthy. Yeah. So Paddy from Offaly, Mary from Cork.
Oh, so Paddy must be happy. Offaly recently won some GA match.
Yeah. Delighted. Yeah, he's from Ferban, a small town in Offaly. Yeah.
Nice, very cool. So moving on from your time at UL, you touched on it. You were president of the students union there 20 years ago. What was college like, and what was it like being the president of the students union? I don't know why it's so difficult saying that.
It was great. College life itself, I did it. I did the kind of the sabbatical students union year. Probably a little bit different to the way most people do it. Some people slot it in between 3rd and 4th or 2nd and 3rd. And I did it at the very end. I finished college and then did a year in the students union. The academic years were fantastic. I think there's a lot of debate over how much use colleges these days, you know, with degrees that are coming out, or a lot of people are saying, you know, is it much use with the whole changing landscape of careers these days? Some, you know, by the time somebody started a course, it's completely changed in 4 years time in terms of what they can get for a job. But I think the whole experience of going to university from a social development aspect and that side of things is, you know, I found really rewarding. That's a complicated way of saying I was on the piss 5 nights a week, but
I was too.
yeah, it was it was yeah, great time in college. And then the kind of the students union thing I kind of fell into, you know, I got a little bit involved in some of the ancillary students union stuff just really in fourth year, maybe second half of third year. And then, you know, somebody mentioned me, said, oh, why don't you consider going for president? So I did, and stuck my name in the hat, and for whatever reason, won the election, and did a full sabbatical year of, you know, being president of the Students' Union, which again was fantastic, hugely rewarding, great experience. You know, you're thrown into a role where you're representing a huge body of people. You're suddenly in committee meetings with the highest level of the university authorities, and you're looking at the actual managing of the students' union accounts, which, you know, run into the millions and things when you're, because they have bars and stores and everything. So for the CV, it was incredible. I mean, it was a great experience for me anyway, regardless of what it did for my CV. But I didn't go into it trying to enhance my CV. I kind of fell into it, but very, very glad I did, because it was hugely rewarding and fantastic experience. Yeah.
Well, you might give someone who's listening to this who's still in university the kick up the ass to potentially go and put their names on a hat, because too late for me. I'm out of DIT probably 7, 8 years. I mentioned at the start of the podcast you're the CEO and founder of DigiFly. However, what people might not know is that you're also a pilot.
That's correct.
Senior first officer with EasyJet for almost 4 years, and then over 15 and a half years with British Airways. So a couple of questions on that. One, what was it like? What was the life like as a pilot? And then I've got a part two, but I'll let you answer that first.
Well, life as a pilot, I'm still with British Airways, and yeah, I mean, it's changed depending on where I was in my career. I mean, the first few years I was working for EasyJet, and that's a very busy airline. Not that British Airways isn't at the moment, the last 18 months aside, which I think most airlines have quieted down a little bit. But when I was in EasyJet, I was doing 6 flights a day on short haul. I was based out of Belfast, and it was great fun. It was a great job great airline to have my first job in. And then I switched to British Airways and switched from short haul to long haul. So essentially then I was not flying every day, because you're flying to a long haul destination outside of Europe. You're spending a day or two there, and then you turn around and you come back. So I'm only doing that maybe 3 or 4 times a month. So it went from 6 flights a day to 8 flights a month, which was a huge transition for the good. It was you know, it was moving from a smaller plane to a bigger plane, flying more people, flying to see far-flung destinations that you're getting to see. So it's been a fantastic career. And then kind of underneath that, I always had an interest in kind of web design and web development. And it's probably, I don't want to lead your questions, but so I'll hold it there. But in terms of the flying, yeah, it's been fantastic to have that career and have those opportunities.
There's some people who are just pilots and that's their full-time thing. You didn't think you were busy enough, and then you also do guest appearances on podcasts as well as own your own business. I do want.
Well, so
go on.
Yeah, no, it's so I was about to say I didn't want to preempt your question, but so while I was being basically, if we go back to step back to when I was in university, and I did engineering, and one of the reasons I went to Limerick is I did aeronautical engineering, and at the time, and it pretty much still is, one of the only places in the country where you can do that course. So that's what brought me down to Limerick, and I'm very glad it did. But at the time, a buddy of mine was was doing computer science, and this is back in 1995 when the internet had just really become a household thing, and he taught me the basics of designing websites, which back then was, if anybody's in the web design industry, it was purely HTML and tables. Only CSS didn't even exist, so they were really crude, pretty poor looking things, but people still wanted them, and people wanted them built. So I managed to get a couple of jobs from the university departments, and they paid me a few quid to build a couple of websites for them, and I was fully going to do that when I finished engineering. I was going to, right, I think I like this. I think I'm going to do web design. And then I actually got into flying. Another buddy of mine was told me that Aer Lingus were going to be advertising for cadet pilots, and they pay for all the training. So I applied, got into that, managed to get the training all sorted from Aer Lingus. Now September 11th sought to end up in EasyJet. We lost our jobs with Aer Lingus, but all the while I still had this kind of underlying thing of, I do like the web design, I do like the web development. A few friends were asking for websites, and when I was in EasyJet, I couldn't really do it. I was doing 6 flights a day. It was a very busy flying job. When I moved to British Airways, to long haul, you're now flying somewhere, you can bring a laptop with you, you're 24, 48 hours in a hotel, you turn around, you come back, you're at home for more days off than I would have been in EasyJet. So I'm like, well, I have all this free time. Why don't I try and pick up the web design and development and see what I can do? And my brother-in-law is a graphic designer, and he had some contacts in the industry who were looking who had clients who wanted websites. So I was like, well, I'll try and I can do websites for these people. And that's when I started a company. And that was back in like 2007. And it was just a web design and web development company then. And from there, it kind of progressed, and it never really, it was just me doing websites for a few clients who are still clients to this day. It's only about maybe 4 years ago or so that then I shifted into e-commerce with Shopify, set up a couple of e-commerce stores myself, which did reasonably well. And then got out of that, actually sold one of them, and then rebranded the whole, I say agency because it was just me, but I had it set up as a company, and I rebranded that into what's now Digifly, and decided to specifically help other clients with setting up e-commerce stores on Shopify because of the experience I'd gained in running my own Shopify stores. And that's where it is now. And it's actually really only grown significantly over the last 2 years. 2 years. Helped hugely over the last 18 months. With, obviously COVID has been a terrible thing for a lot of people and a lot of industries, but e-commerce has been one of the ones that has actually grown significantly. And so that luckily enough, helped me grow this agency as well to where it is now.
You touched on Aer Lingus. I know that my uncle is a captain for over 20 years with Aer Lingus, and he flies long haul to the States, and he likes that lifestyle compared to short haul. He did short haul for a while and much prefers being able to, go being in America for 24, 36, 48 hours and then turning around and having that free time. Questions around e-commerce. You founded Digifly at the beginning of 2019. You said you renamed it or restructured it to be Digifly. For our listeners that don't know exactly what either Shopify, e-commerce, or Digifly is, can you answer those 3 questions? So that will help with the next segment of this podcast.
Sure. So, I mean, at a very basic level, I mean, e-commerce is, online, our retailers being able to put their products online so that they can sell them. I mean, I'm sure most people have interacted with an e-commerce store in one level or another, be it on their desktop or their phone, where they've purchased a product online. Shopify is simply just a platform that enables retailers to put their products online. It's the likes of WordPress or Wix or Squarespace, which I'm sure people have probably seen ads for here and there. Shopify is just one that's specifically tailored towards e-commerce. You wouldn't be putting a blog site on Shopify. It's really just for physical products, and it's one of the fastest growing platforms now. They've got over 1 million merchants on their platform. They're based in Canada, but they're growing hugely in the UK and Ireland. I think they're the fastest growing e-commerce platform here at the moment. And so I hung my hat on, right, I could have done, let's just do web design and development, or even just e-commerce, and we can build on all sorts of different platforms, WordPress, Magento, all these different ones. But I stuck with Shopify because of my experience with Shopify, and by doing that as well, I think it's helped us as an agency, because retailers are becoming very aware of Shopify, and they know that it's a great platform. So when they go looking for a Shopify agency, we're one of, from my research, less than 5 in the country who are
Wow.
dedicated Shopify agencies. So they come looking, and they invariably end on our doorstep. Yeah.
You mentioned that there's over 1 million people in the market who have a Shopify store. Before you get anyone to take action in your store, you've got to get their attention or their eyeballs on your store. 2019, you developed, and I'm reading from notes here, you developed your own Shopify store and took it from 0 to over 1 million in revenue in under 10 months. Inevitably, people are going to make mistakes, or I'd like to position it as inevitably people are probably going to come to road bumps on their journey. Are there common ones that you consistently see people make? And if so, what are they? Perhaps you could help them so that if future people come to them, they can drive over or around it rather than try to drive through it.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I know it says on the website that we set up a store and brought it to 7 figures in 10 months, and that's correct. But what's actually not written there is that there was 3 failed stores before that. And so through that process, I actually learned quite a bit. But there's probably a commonly held belief that, you have a product, you can just set up a website and start throwing money at Facebook or whatever and get people to have a look at it, and that's all you need to do, and people will start buying it. But there's a huge amount more to it. You very much need to understand your customer and know who your customer is. We get some people who inquire about saying, we need an online store, we need a retail store, we need can you set us up a Shopify store? We've got 5 products, please set it up. How long is it going to take, and how much is it going to cost? And we just go, okay, let's put the brakes on. Let's step back a little bit, because we need to find out every single thing about your business, your product, and who your ideal customer is before we can even consider building you a store. And a lot of people will just set up a store and go, okay, what now? But it's by going through that process of really understanding your market, understanding your audience, positioning the product correctly, and then figuring out how to build a store, how to build it around that model, and then putting a strategy in place for acquiring those customers, how to get them in the door, convert them when they're on your site, and then retain them on the other end, bring them back in. Those are 3 vitally important components of an e-commerce business, which a lot of the time get overlooked. A lot of the time it's just, stick the products up, get traffic in, pay for traffic to come onto your site, and hopefully things will work out. But unfortunately for a lot of businesses, it doesn't. And it requires a lot of thought process in place to get all those components correct.
You mentioned that there's some people out there that will think the winning strategy is to put money behind Facebook ads with the objective to drive people towards your website, and then people fill their cart and they buy. However, one thing that I found out from the blog on your site, which I'll link below, is that cart abandonment is a big thing. In 2018, again, reading from my notes here, UK online retail market vendors lost more than 18 billion pounds. However, another statistic that sprung to my mind was 17% of shoppers who abandoned their carts never had any intention to buy. So it's definitely an issue. How do you help people reduce the number of people how do you help reduce the number of people that will leave their product in their cart? And is it true that some people leave a product in a cart because they have a fear that it might go out of stock?
Yeah, I mean, there's all sorts of reasons. So for starters, that 17% you say never have an intention of buying something. There will be those window shoppers who will never really. You have serial cart abandoners who will just add stuff to their cart. I mean, the typical cart abandon rate is about 60 to 70%, which is massive. So 60 to 70% of people who put stuff in their cart aren't going to complete the purchase there and then. Now, they might come back and do it, but there and then they're not going to. But so you got that 70%, or roughly speaking, who are never have an intention of buying anything. And then you've got people who, we live in such a distracting world these days that, you know, they're shopping on either on their phone or their desktop. They put something in their cart, and anything, an email pops up, the doorbell rings, the baby's crying, whatever it is, they get distracted and they leave the site. So what you need to do then as an online merchant is put processes in place that will just nudge people back to where they were, so that they do go, because you know they probably inevitably did want to purchase that, or they wanted to engage with your brand, or they did want to purchase something on the site. And if they put something in their cart, they're probably very much thinking about going ahead with the sale. You know, it's very different to the physical world, where, you know, you don't get many people going into the shop, putting stuff in their shopping basket and then just throwing it down and walking out the door. But because it's so easy to abandon it when you're in a digital space, it just happens so often. So typically, and most people will probably be aware of this, you have your abandoned cart emails that get sent out. So that when you abandon us, if you have to abandon your cart, and you have either have to have signed up to the newsletter prior to that, or you've had to started the checkout process. And you can send an email, and typically, and again, a lot of online retailers that I've had experience with, some don't have this in place at all. But typically they would send out one email. You know, an email would go out 24 hours later saying, you know, you left this in your cart, do you want to come back and buy it? We tend to put more than that in place. We tend to put either 2 or 3 emails, and you have a first email, second email, first email a couple of hours after, second email a day after, third email 2 days after, with the third email having some sort of incentive, like a 10% discount or something like that. Bearing in mind that people don't get the second or third email if they've taken action after the first email. So that's one process we have in place. It's quite difficult here it's a little bit easier with email than it is the likes of SMS. Merchants in the States can kind of utilize SMS a little bit better outside of the GDPR requirements, where you can which is hugely powerful, where you can, if you send in somebody a text message to say you've left this in your cart, because people are way more inclined to read a text message than they are to open an email. But that's yeah, pretty much in terms of abandoned carts, it's really the email side of things that kind of brings people in, and that can get your 60 to 70% abandonment rate right down to 50%. There's a lot of other reasons why people will abandon a cart when they get to the checkout and they see that the shipping is too expensive. They go, no, okay, too late. And that comes back to how you inform people at the right point in the process, so that they know that there is a shipping cost before they're putting stuff into their cart, and that, you know, they're not getting a surprise when they check out. So there's all sorts of little things. But I think the best rates you'll ever see are going to be still going to be 50%. You can get it down maybe a little bit under that, but that's probably the best most retailers will have online.
Safe to say there's a lot to the art of getting a really good performing Shopify store up and running. Makes sense as to why you have carved out a nice market to help people with that, because we've only just touched on cart abandonment, and I can already see that you just touched the iceberg on that with how people can reduce the amount of abandoned carts. There's things like email marketing. I know you speak positively, or whoever writes the blogs on your website speaks positively about email marketing being one of the most reliable marketing methods. Does that still play a role to date in helping you attain and retain customers? And any tips for people to stand out in the inbox?
Hugely, especially very much so in the customer retention side of things. And that's, again, it's one thing that some retailers tend to overlook. They concentrate very much on getting people in, where do we spend money on Google Ads? Where do we spend money on Facebook? Get people into our site. Those people go and purchase something, and then more often than not, they get forgotten about. Now, I know these days it is harder to gather emails for promotional reasons. You do need to get them to opt in for GDPR requirements. But if you can, and a lot of people actually do opt in to emails. It's not letting that email list then just sit idle and never contacted. And I know some people will send out, they'll go, okay, we have an email list, we've got 1,000 people in it, what do we do? Oh, let's send out a campaign and say we've got a sale on, and they'll do that, and then they'll get some money out of it. And then 4 weeks, 6 weeks down the line, they go, we have this email list, we better do something again with it. What do we do? One of the marketing areas where you'll get most return for your spend, because it might cost money to get them on your list, but once they're on your list, and you can market to them. You're only paying your monthly fee for your email software, your autoresponder, or whatever it is that's sending out these campaigns. And you can build in very powerful automated email flows as well, they're called, where, for instance, if somebody purchased from you for the second time, the system recognizes that, and it gives them an extra special thanks, saying, thank you so much for coming back and spending money with us. We really appreciate you, and here's a discount off your third purchase. Or you can set it up so that if somebody hasn't come back in 6 months, it sends them out an email, say, look, you haven't been back in a while, we're still thinking of you. Here's our latest offers. Do you want to have a look? And they're all automated, and you can build those in. And once they're set up, they just work on, excuse the pun, autopilot, and they're hugely powerful. And also how you can segment audiences these days around e-commerce. There's some really powerful tools out there that you can segment people based on what they've bought, how much they've spent, and how much time they've spent browsing on a particular product, for instance, and then tailor specific emails to those segments of your audience, rather than just sending out a blanket email to every single person on your list, which is going to not resonate with potentially 80 to 90% of them, might resonate with 10%. And that is, to answer the second part of your question, how do you get people to open those emails, is that you send relative content. You send content that means something to them, not just, we're having a 10% sale on this set of products when you went and bought this set of products, so these set of products are no use to you, but we're telling you about a 10% sale anyway. Then yeah, it's getting that segmentation correct, which is hard from when you're starting off, but once you do build up a decent size of a list, of customer list, you can do it really well. And then it's it's playing around with subject lines and things like that, so that you can get the open rate. But again, playing around with subject lines to get a good open rate doesn't necessarily sell the product either. You can get people to open it, but it's getting them to click through and then actually purchase the product. And that's where the segmentation, I think, comes in really well.
Watching you the last 3 or 4 minutes chat there, it's safe to say you're really passionate about what you do. Your hands move, and you talk quite enthusiastically about your business. So as your role as a founder / CEO, is there anything about your role, or you could say your industry, that you disagree with? And if so, what is it?
That I disagree with? Yeah, I mean...
Or let me rephrase it, like a commonly held belief about your role or industry is what I meant to position it as.
Yeah, well, it's probably something that I touched on, that there's sometimes a commonly held belief by other business owners or retailers who want to get themselves online, that they literally just have to go and hire a developer or a freelancer or an agency to say, look, we need a website, here's our products, how much is it going to cost and how long is it going to take? And we have when we speak to new clients now, we have a kind of a robust discovery process that we bring them through, which involves 2 to 3 1-hour calls with the client and all the stakeholders, whoever needs to be on that call in the business, so we can unravel everything about the business, about the product, about the customer. And by doing so, we've actually, the customers or the clients that have come to us and said, we just need a website, how much is it going to cost? When we bring them through that process, they thank us for it, and they say, do you know what, we actually uncovered a huge amount of stuff that we didn't know about our own business, about our own products, and we've been targeting the wrong audience. So now that we've gone through this process and you've put a solution in place, we're very much happy to pay what it is that you suggested, what you think it is going to be, because a lot of people will just sell a website off the shelf and go, there's a website, it costs you $2,000. But it ticks the box that we now have a website, but it's not going to do what they want. And finding out what that company wants, and for themselves as well, is hugely important. So that's, I think, one thing that a lot of, probably more so in kind of, I've seen it in smaller and larger businesses, actually. I think it's across the board. A lot of people do know these days that they need to go through a process like that, but unfortunately some don't.
We're coming near the end of our conversation. For our American listeners, and I don't know if you've listened to previous episodes, Patrick, but for our American listeners, one I'm about to reference is high school. And for our British and Irish listeners, I say that because they're our top 3 audiences. Shout out to Belgium, which is number 4, but high school and secondary school. If you could add one mandatory subject to the curriculum, what would it be and why?
It's a good question. Probably financial planning.
Okay.
Financial planning and the fundamentals of investing. I don't mean day trading, but actually taking your money and figuring out what to do with it. If I knew what I knew now, and I'm 44, so I'm getting along. But if I knew back at 18 what I know now in terms of, and I know there's financial, there's BizOrg and there's accountancy, and I can't remember what the other one is in terms of finance for Leaving Cert, but and I know you do go through, you get taught the basics of simple interest and compound interest, but if it could be really hammered home that if you take, 200 quid every month of your paycheck and stick it into a decently an investment fund that will do reasonably well over a long period of time, by the time you retire, you're over £1 million in a pot that you can access. And it's that, and it's hugely difficult when you're young. When you're in your late teens or your early 20s, you just want to spend every single penny you have from the first job you got. And if you could teach some sort of mindset to invest even a little bit of your paycheck into a fund that pays 7-8%, nothing even ridiculously crazy, that you would set yourself up financially extremely well for even not even after retirement, into your 40s or 50s. So I think that would be one subject, something I wish I knew back then.
I'm with you. Solid point. And it's I've had two now, once the last 2 years in a row, a financial hour-and-a-half consultation call where they kind of go through where you're at, work where you want to go to, and work backwards. And definitely one of the most valuable 90 minutes I spend annually is on that 90-minute call.
Absolutely. I mean, there's obviously financial planners out there, and I've spoken to one myself, but people don't. I wouldn't have dreamt of speaking to a financial planner when I was in my 20s. I was like, what are you talking about? Retirement's, that's for retirement, and that's for when you're in your 60s, and that's a lifetime away. So if that could be, and it's it's a mindset thing. It's not even, it's having the knowledge, but then also developing a mindset around it. And if that could be taught at a younger age, I think it would be really beneficial.
No, you're right. Like even if you're in your young 20s and you can put in like €100 a month into something like a dynamic fund that is giving you back 6 to 8% a year, compared to just a current long-term savings account with one of the traditional banks, just the habit that forms, and then also you can see the way that if you're smart with your money, you can actually stretch it. Anyway,
yeah.
One of the final questions is, if your house was on fire, all your loved ones are safe, but your house is on fire and you can only save one item, what would it be?
Another good question. Your loved ones are all safe. The dog's safe?
If you love the dog, it's safe.
It's debatable, but no, we'll bring him with us. No, I don't know. I don't think there's a couple of toys my kids are really attached to right now, so I could probably grab one of those. But personally, everything's digital now, isn't it?
Yep.
Maybe even I think our wedding photos were all printed out from digital, so they could be replaced. There's probably
a good sign. It's a good sign, Patrick. If there's nothing you can think of, that's a good sign.
One of the kids' toys.
How do you continue to learn and invest in yourself? Are there books, podcasts, channels, maybe YouTube channels or Vimeo channels that you watch, or conferences that you attend, coaches that you engage with?
Yeah, well, I mean, one of the biggest boosts for me was I actually joined a mentorship group that's based out of the US, but they have members. A couple of members in Ireland, a few in the UK. The majority are in the US. It's a community of I'm going to get this wrong now, but probably about a couple of hundred. And it's ongoing training, ongoing mentorship, and access to a community of digital agency owners. And to condense that down, I guess if anybody was looking to scale their own business or themselves, getting a mentor, I think is hugely beneficial. I think you can scale a business or you can grow a business without it, but getting somebody like a mentor, it will just accelerate it. It will happen a lot faster. Like I have 2 full-time employees right now, and 6 months ago it was just me, and that took a 12 months of being in that community, being in that group, to kind of really figure out and go, okay, now, and I never thought I'd make a full-time hire, and I did that in February, and then I was like, well, now I'm making another one, and we just made one there last month. So yeah, it's probably getting into some sort of mentorship or mastermind group or something in your industry to accelerate your process and accelerate your ability to scale. I'm not a big, I do like reading. I'm not a big fiction reader. I do like reading fact books and ones around business and scaling, but I find it hard to take one and start, like read it from start to finish. So I've actually started using Blinkist. I don't know if you've ever seen that app.
Yes, I have it on my phone.
I find it brilliant. It just condenses entire books into chunks of content that you can read in about 10 or 15 minutes. You're obviously probably missing out a huge amount from the book, but it really does condense and distill down some really worthwhile books. And so I read a lot of that, and there's a lot of stuff in that. But yeah, so that would be probably the 2 things: is reading, especially whatever's around in your industry, and kind of trying to find some sort of mentor as well is huge, I think.
I'm going to leave links to Digifly's website below. There's a number of case studies. There's a blog that I thoroughly enjoyed reading as well. You can check out other companies that you guys have worked with, and obviously your LinkedIn as well. If there's anything else, you can let me know offline, and I'll leave links in them below. But for today, it's been incredibly. I've enjoyed my time a lot chatting with you, Patrick. It's really cool that you got not only a pilot for British Airways, but you're building this business that you're managing to hire people and continue to scale it at the same time. So kudos to you for what you do. It'd be great to have you back on as you continue to grow a year from now to see where you are and what other changes are in the market. Because I know that e-commerce is a market that changes rapidly. But for today, thanks for being my guest, Patrick.
Rian, thank you. Absolute pleasure.